Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to talk about what we've built so far and what we want to build next, about mobility, of course, about the way we bring affordable mobility to people and we allow the reduction of the emissions of cars and the energy consumption per person who gets transported. So just to make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about cars which are already running on the road. So as a driver, when you drive alone and you have 3 available seats, you could share the cost and you could share the time with people. As you can see, it can get very expensive to drive alone with your car. It can get also boring. And actually, when you're 4 in the car, you pay less and you have a better time. That's what we're providing to people, and that's what makes the success of BlaBlaCar today in all the countries we've been launching so far. So we are really a combination of 2 things, a travel search engine and a community, a trusted community. We are building trust in the community of people who've never met. The drivers and the passengers have never met before they get in the car. And so we're making a technology that allows them to actually know with whom they'll be ride-sharing before. And on top of this, we have a travel search engine, which works like any travel search engine you'll have for trains, planes, or other means of transport. So we are really a people-powered travel, for people, by people. All the people in the BlaBlaCar community are people like you and me. There is no professional. We just provide a solution for people to share their car on a daily basis when they make long-distance rides. Basically, the average distance of a BlaBlaCar ride is more than 200 miles. So we are working on city-to-city travel, really. We're not working on intra-city travel. And we're providing a way for people to actually do, as we say, a ride in the ride, which means you actually meet new people and you can discuss with them, you discover their lives. And the reason why actually we're named BlaBlaCar, I don't know if you know this small story, but it's because when you register in the service as a member, you choose how much you talk in the car. So you choose if you are blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. That makes the... That's why we're called BlaBlaCar. And so you have people who are blahs, and which means they say hello, goodbye. We have people who are blah blahs, so they talk when they want to. And we have people who are blah blah blahs, which means you can't stop them when they talk. So you choose who you are, and you get comfortable with that. So we've got now a fast-growing phenomenon. We're looking at more than 20 million people sharing rides now. And actually, the story began a bit earlier, and as it was told before, it was a personal need because I needed to get back home in my home place, which is about 500 kilometers from Paris, at Christmas time, and all the trains were full. I was quite late in booking anything anyway, so that's why everything was full. And then my little sister came from up north Paris, and then she picked me up with her car, and she brought me back home, and then I realized that almost all the cars were empty on the roads, so I thought, okay, there was seats available, but they were not in the trains, they were in the cars. And we need to make sure we are able to index all those available seats, and there were like thousands of people going actually to Vendée, my home place, for Christmas, but then I had no access to this excess capacity in all those empty cars. And so that's how it all began. It actually began 10 years ago, so I spared you the years before 2009, which are like the sickness of the line, because of course it was maybe not the time. And so what this curve just shows is that we believe the time has come, and we have now the tools to make this optimization work. We have a way to optimize the usage of our cars thanks to mobile phones, connectivity, and so many empty cars. So the time has come. We're in 19 countries now. What's good about the name BlaBlaCar, just like Uber, just like Zipcar, it's like international names. It's also people thinking it's local name, so it's good because it's a global, as we call it, name. People think BlaBla is from their own country, and so sometimes like in Spain and France and Germany, and then you could think it's a local service, but it's actually a very, very large and international service now. We recently launched in India and Mexico, which were the latest places where we launched. It's been starting super well as well there. It's a big challenge to actually expand like this. I mean, we all witness that because the companies we're talking about here witness super fast expansion. This is what's happening thanks to new technologies being spread out all over the globe, and that's also a challenge for all of us because it means very, very fast change, and it means some of the habits are changing, but they are changing super fast because it's so logical to actually change them using those tools. So some positive impacts. The average number of people per car in city to city travel is 1.7. And what we do with BlaBlaCar is we bring that up to 2.8 people per car in the BlaBlaCar community. So we're improving the usage of car. 97% of the people who ride share says it makes an enjoyable ride. It actually allows them to meet new people and get new stories. And actually the first thing that people will tell you when they ride share is that they have met exceptional people and they have discovered someone. And of course, yes, they saved money because it was a cheaper option for them, but it's not what they remember. What they remember is the story of the people they've met. And it creates a better social connection for all of us while we travel. And we spend so much time traveling that it's also a good solution for having a better life. And then we also witness a behavioral modification of the people. The reasons why they start ride sharing and the reason why they continue are not the same. What we witnessed is that when they join, the part of people who join for actually social reasons or for environmental reasons is super small. The first time they do rideshare, it's not because they believe it's better for the environment or because they believe they're going to meet someone. It's because they want to save money. And so that's the entry door. But then when we ask to people who've been ride-sharing a lot why they are continuing ride-sharing, then they say, it's because I know it's better for the environment and I'd rather travel that way because it allows me to have a better social life. So the motivations are different, and we believe that our tool, BlaBlaCar, is also a way for people to get a sense of the environmental impacts, and it's a tool for education as well, which will help probably others and other tools and products to get developed in a more responsible way in the next decade. On the field of energy savings and CO2 emissions, actually we calculated that in the last 2 years, BlaBlaCar allowed for more than 1 million tons of CO2 emissions to be saved and 500,000 tons oil equivalent of energy to be saved as well. This represents enough energy to light Los Angeles for a full year. Of course, it's only the beginning, as you've seen on the curves. We truly believe we can bring a solution that will allow us to reduce the energy consumption by a lot and the CO2 emissions by a lot as well. On the behavioral aspects, we've made surveys to understand what behavior could have changed thanks to ride-sharing. And so we remarked that since people get together in the car and they're not alone and they're actually rated at the end of the ride, they behave more responsibly and they behave in a safer manner. So 75% of the people who ride-share declare that having passengers on board makes them carefully respect the rules of the road. And we didn't ask them if they were really respecting them before, but actually they say that since they have people on board, they feel more responsible. They will make more pauses, like every 2 hours they'll stop. They will not go above the speed limit. They will not have a phone call while driving. They will not do anything that is dangerous, or they will not even, they are less subject to road rage, which means better for everybody. And all this is thanks to the fact that by having people on board and not being alone, they behave more responsibly, And so we also believe that BlaBlaCar becomes an indication tool for a better driving for everybody and a safer driving. And they're also more alert because thanks to the BlaBla thing, they discuss and they're actually more alert. You know that drowsiness is among the highest cause of accidents on the road. And thanks to the fact that you have people in the car and you're able to discuss and share things, then it makes you more alert and less subject to accidents. Thank you very much. We have a bright future ahead and we will build it together. Thank you.
Frederick, thank you very much. That was great. Please take your seat. I thought that was really, really interesting because it throws up so many different issues. And I just want to say one thing, first of all. It strikes me that for the brave new world that you have described, you four, I don't want to exclude you here, Umberto, but what they've described, a lot of this brave new world relies on honesty. Honesty, how good you are as a driver, honesty, how nice your flat is if it's Airbnb. So how honest, Frederick, are people about crossing blah, blah, blah as opposed to just blah, blah? Because blah, blah seems to be the kind of middle option. How many people actually say that they are big talkers, and how many of those then get offered a ride?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Myself, I'm declared as a blah blah, and I've been told I'm blah blah blah. So we haven't conducted research to be exact on this, to be honest. But it's what you declare and what you do may be different, if that's the bottom line, like the sense of your question. And so just because you declare things doesn't mean you should not enforce a way for people to get rated and for checks to be operated. So trust is something which is super complicated. It's like, it's a collection of different parameters that you need to put aside so that you are able to provide your trust to someone. And it includes information you declare, information which have been rated by some people, and information which has been checked and regulated. So it's a collection of those information that allows you to give your trust to someone and that builds honesty for the individuals because they know that everything is also checked and evaluated by other people.
And is that checking and regulation system that relies on people putting in information, does that work efficiently in your experience?
Yeah, what we witnessed is that the simple fact that people know that there are some checks and that they will be evaluated changes their behavior. So it makes you more responsible to know that you will be rated, and it's been working for us at scale. We're now in a community of more than 20 million people. We've proven that it works. You never know if it's like bulletproof because, of course, it's so complicated, and in life you can't actually predict future with past data, and that's what we're all trying to do. We have engagement for this, so we can push ourselves in the future by forcing people to make engagements, but then nothing is like totally bulletproof, of course, because predicting future with past data is simply not given to us and to anyone.
Let me broaden it out and ask you a question, Robin. I mean, what you describe in your sweeping presentation is really the sort of the empowerment of the individual on so many different levels, whether it's transport, accommodation, or learning, thanks to technology. But that power of the individual rubs up against the increasing empowerment of government and big companies using the same tools of technology to their advantage. Is that where the big clash resides? Between the individual becoming smarter, more efficient, more mobile, and government saying, hang on a minute, if you're going to do this, I want to have a slice of taxation. Or big companies saying, you are treading on my turf, please get off.
King now?
Yeah, it is now, yes.
So just how I think about this regulatory piece, and I'm laughing at the different ways the respondents have been adding their particular color to the angle. I would say that regulation should be benefiting citizens, should be to protect citizens. I'm completely there. But what we see in the regulatory environment is rules like GPS is not an acceptable method of measuring distance because the rule was invented before GPS was invented, and so that's a crazy rule. We all agree. There's also rules that are anti-competitive, so they're not there to make a playing field. In Miami, you can't pick up a hailed, if you're a black car, you can't pick up anyone sooner than 15 minutes. So it's not, so we know that there are rules that are anti-competitive, we know the rules that are old, and there are rules that are completely fantastic. Yes, we should have vehicles that are well insured, and the owner of that vehicle should be well insured, and the vehicle should be well insured. I am completely with you on all of those parts. So when I look at the regulatory mess, is I see we have entrenched interests, a very slow-moving bureaucracy, and the rules are all muddled up. Good ones, bad ones, outdated ones, all in a big clot, and they're mixed up. So just one piece that I just want to bring into the rating versus certification rule. With Zipcar, and I believe with Uber, with Zipcar, we would do a background driving check on people, and if they'd had a moving violation in the last 3 years or a DUI ever, they were not members, period. So there's accreditation that the platform can do before, and then there are these ratings and commentaries. And so I would instruct my daughters, please don't take any of those trips when they're unrated, because they might be a good driver, and they might be a rapist. I'm going to leave that to the 40-year-old man. He can take the first 4 trips until the person is rated, and then my daughters can go.
And the consumer can trust the rating system that you put in place as much as they can trust a government rating system.
And on that point, I would even say better, because the taxi driver, let's say the bus driver, he took his test once 5 years ago, and now he's been driving. Since then, he became an alcoholic and an idiot, and now he's a bad driver. In an app format, every single time he takes a trip, he's rated. And in a government format, the person is rated in these big blocks of time.
Umberto, you didn't seem to be agreeing with your body language at the beginning of what Robin said. Can you weigh in, please?
Yeah, it's a question of, we can have rating systems, we can have all kinds of things where you say that the company will do the pre-inspection, will check the drivers and all that. And to that I would also say, fine, but then change the regulations, because today the profession is subjected to the rules and regulations that oblige them to have accredited drivers. And if you want to do that, then let's have a level playing field. But then it's society as a whole that has to decide, yes, we would accept a rating system, and we accept auto-regulation, whereby the industry would say, well, I'll check if the driver's good or not. And if society today, we've reached a stage where society is comfortable with that, then let's change the regulations. But the regulations exist today. So what we don't agree with is this anti-competitive situation where we have all these rules and regulations and burdens of having to buy insurance and then you have others, such as Uber Pop in particular, where basically I'm on an app, I just click, and then some guy in some car will show up. And that's where we see where the competition is unfair, and in terms of what is behind that, what is the quality you will be getting, you're not assured of that. And of course, and I'm certain what we'll hear now is, but we check our drivers and all this, but then let us just check our drivers.
Okay, David?
Yeah, well, first, I think in terms of consumers, I mean, think about it. Again, I talked in my presentation about the sense of control that platforms like Uber, BlaBla, Zipcar give drivers. It gives consumers more control than they've ever had. The rating system is so important, and it is actionable. So that if someone is driving through 4 red lights, that will be registered. If someone is acting inappropriately in the car, that will get registered. By the way, on the rider side too, there's power there for drivers, which if they have a rude rider, as you know, the driver rates the rider too, and they will get booted off the platform. So complete transparency. It's not just trust, it's also technology. If you're in an Uber or a Lyft or an Ola, every part of that ride is GPS tracked. There's rating, there's no anonymity ever again. You know who you're getting in the car with.
How many people actually rate? I mean, how many people use Uber actually?
To rate.
You have to rate.
Every, as you know, if you've used it, you have to rate before you can request another ride. Yeah. And, you know, I do think that the society has spoken. They want additional mobility options, okay? For any of you out there who are involved in how do I make my cities work better today or tomorrow, there has to be more mobility options. And, we are hungry for new regulations, and that's what's happening all over the world. There are regulations being passed, new laws being passed that aren't trying to fit Uber and services like it into, pre-GPS, pre-smartphone laws, new laws. But what those laws do is enshrine background checks, insurance requirement, vehicle inspections, financial arrangements. And that's where I think the discussion's headed. I think largely now the debate is less, should we accept new mobility options? It's how to do that. And again, it's part of an ecosystem. There's no one answer. What people want is, I will take an Uber to my job, I may take a car to the airport, I'm flying somewhere, I'm going to get in a BlaBlaCar to visit my family. It's an amazing suite of options now that gives people more flexibility. I
mean, Umberto, you have to be honest, don't you, that the global taxi network that you were talking about in your presentation would probably not have been born had it not been for the competition from outside, from companies like Uber or Zipcar.
Sure.
Right.
It's certain that by pushing the envelope, this will raise the level of everyone, of all the services. And if I can praise Uber for something, it is for that, for really pushing the envelope. And there are extremely good Uber services. Mm-hmm. There are some that are commendable. Our problem is with Uber Pop, which is where you have an application where you can have a driver, basically just because I have a car, you can then provide a service. I used to usually in presentations say, how many people in the audience have driving licenses? And everybody would put up their hands. And I said, does that mean you can run a taxi company? And the answer is no, because you have to have certain qualifications to do that. It all comes back down to the regulations, and society and governments are speaking. Well, this is a fact. In close to 30 countries now, Uber Pop is outlawed, or it's forbidden to be used. And I know that Uber is spending a lot of money to try to change the regulations. You have over 100 lobbyists, so there's a real effort to change the regulations. But I think if we took a more a positive approach to it, rather than being, as I said before, anarchists and just pushing and doing it before law, let's sit around a table and develop good regulations based on today's realities, on GPS, on all the technologies. I mean, about apps. I mean, on my phone, I live by apps. So let's make it so that we can make this a reality today.
But is the emphasis on regulation, and I know that you're not the regulator, but you've been making a pretty good case for regulation, is the emphasis on regulation essentially a fig leaf for a game about capital and power and share of market? You come up with regulation, but actually what you're really worried about is that, taxi industry losing share of the market, or if it's a government losing share of taxation, etc. Is that what it's about?
Competition is good. Competition is what will drive progress. But it has to be on a level playing field. You can't have some trying to compete with the rules and then others don't compete with the rules. And there was talk before of changing capitalism, that this is in fact a changing capitalism. Think back to what happened in the financial markets due to lack of regulation. And now they're trying to regulate. So if we move away now and say, no, but in the shared economy, we don't need regulations, but we do. But if they need to be changed so that we can have security and safety for the passengers, then we need to change the rules.
I want to ask Mika a question. Mika, you represent HERE, which is a business bought by Nokia, one of the biggest companies in Europe, an iconic Finnish company, dominant in the Finnish economy. Is this a big business adapting to a new reality by incorporating smaller startup companies and going with the flow, as it were? How would you put your position?
Let me come back to that, but just one comment to the regulation kind of the thing. So I think that we are in certain cases over-regulating things. And I have this kind of analogy that like in logistic, in regulation, last mile is the most difficult one. And second thing is about the regulation is what we have heard here in this excellent summit is the need for international regulation. And so that these new kind of services, shared economy things, they are global by nature. And we need to create the environment where especially the consumer is in the middle. And they can expect a similar kind of the quality of the service regardless of the country or regardless of the sharing economy area or business what they are using. That is important topic. Now coming back to this, that maybe if I may take a little bit the wider approach. I have quite often used GSM as an example of good thing what happened to the ecosystem and to the industry. And I am seeing a lot of the similarities happening at the moment in the transportation side. In GSM, industry together with government were able to create healthy, good ecosystem where we have clear rules, how we are protecting immaterial rights, how we are providing services, how different companies can, as you said, compete. We have a certain kind of interfaces which are open, and then every company can provide better and better, cheaper and cheaper solutions. And when it comes to business models then, growth. In 1990, how many business models there were associated to GSM? 2. Sell one service, voice, to consumers, sell equipments to operators. How many business models there are today associated to GSM or telecom network? No one knows. Uber, BlaBlaCar, Zipcar, sorry. They are just, again, a classical example. They have inherited a little bit and they are benefiting from this overall infrastructure. This is what we need at the moment to transportation. The best part for the government, I would say, is how many new jobs GSM created to Europe, to the world? Raise of applications. Same thing will happen also in transportation. In Finland, we have this initiative called as Mobility as a Service, which may lead this sharing, car sharing thing to the next level. And again, having an analogy from GSM side, you have a fixed fee, what you are spending for your transportation. Then it's up to you what kind of modes you are using. Sounds today very attractive, few years ago impossible, maybe 2020 reality.
Okay, great. Now let's open it up to the audience. Does anyone have a question in the audience? Excellent. Can we have a microphone here? Or do we just want to... That's coming, the mic is coming. We can do mic sharing as well. There we go. That's it, yeah, the lady there. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. David. You said you want to expand your carpooling services. Where you're looking at which countries and which regions? And in particularly, are you looking at the Middle East?
Well, we'd like to take it as many places as we can. And the truth is, if you're going to make carpooling work, there has to be both a population density and density of vehicles. So UberPop, UberX are going to be part of the solution if cities want to get carpooling on scale. So, you know, there are places in the Middle East. You know, Dubai's a great example, a city that's got the Expo in 2020. You know, where I do think they are, from a for-hire vehicle standpoint, far below the global standard, so there's a need for more mobility options. So we will take it, the technology is very complicated, really complicated to make this work. I mean, again, it's natural now to press a phone and get a ride. When it first happened, it was almost inconceivable, okay? Now, to make that work with 2, 3 people in the car. So we have to have a mixture of the technology working right for that city. We have to have the right sort of population density, which is most global cities have that. And they don't even have to be that large. There are some even smaller cities that are just very dense where this works well. And then you have to have enough supply of drivers on the road. And I think that Uber Pool and carpooling services will be attractive to drivers. Again, as I said in my opening statement, it's great for them because they make more money because they're always on a trip. And what's interesting is we see in San Francisco and Los Angeles a prime reason that people are using Uber Pools. Some of it's because it's more affordable. But they're mirroring what Frederick said, a lot of people are choosing to do it because of the environmental impact. They feel that they're making a difference, and they are. So our goal is, you know, we'll be bringing it to more cities this year, a lot more next. But, you know, we want to bring it to as many places as we can. It's interesting. So in the Philippines, which is the first country, because most, not all, but most regulations in the transportation sector are done at the local level. So it's the first country to pass modern ride-sharing regulations to allow not just Uber Black, and we have competitors there, but also the lower cost product. In the regulations is a pilot around carpooling. They're hungry for that. A lot of the discussions we're having right now with governments, and I've had some here at this event for the last 24 hours, center around that. There's a real excitement about it because they understand that if you could get carpooling on scale to work, it's part of how you pick the lock in terms of the challenge cities are dealing with. So stay tuned, but we're so passionate about it. It's one of the main reasons people are choosing to come work for Uber now, is they're very motivated about the potential of carpooling on scale.
Why have so many authorities and companies around the world, established companies, decided to pick fights with Uber? What is it about you guys?
Well, and I think with all due respect to my fellow panelist, Umberto, I do think that, that some of this, no doubt, is when you have a monopoly, most people like to keep it that way. Now, we are not, what's ironic about that is most of our ridership is not in direct competition with taxi. Again, those are people choosing not to drive themselves. But so I do think some of this is regulatory capture in the context of trying to protect monopoly. I think, although I do think this is a good opportunity to liberalize some things for taxi too. For instance, in Portland, Oregon, in the United States, they just passed ride-sharing regulations about a month ago, and part of the new law is to give taxi companies more flexibility around setting prices, which is great. We're supportive of that. So I do think in this, if we can make life better for taxi drivers, we should. So it's new, okay? So it's a challenge. So I think that, again, we're dealing with things like return to garage rules. We're dealing with regulations. I mean, I worked in government. I understand this. When I worked for President Obama, he actually ordered a complete review of every regulation in government. And, I'm a progressive, so I believe in health regulations, safety regulations, food safety, things of this sort, keeping mercury out of the air. But through that review, it was fascinating because there were hundreds of regulations on the federal government books. I asked the question, by the way, why don't we do this every year? We should. That they might have served a purpose at some point, serve no purpose now. And we're just creating more of a burden and more competitiveness. So I think sometimes the discussion on regulation is freighted, right? You're either for regulation or you're against regulation. I think what we need to be for is smart regulations, modern regulations. As Robin said, you need to really look at these very frequently now. The pace of change is so rapid. And the pace of change over the next 5 years is going to be like anything we've seen before. With virtual reality, with automotive technology, it's going to really put a lot of pressure on all of us to figure out what's the best way forward, both to protect consumers, but also allow competition. So, but I would say directionally, the debate, listen again, we've had countries all over the world now either pass regulations, involved in discussions. In the United States, which is our most mature market, again, a year ago, not a single new law, not a single one. The debate was still like, Uber, Lyft, should these things be permitted? Now, almost every major state and city has passed new laws. Why did they do that? Because most of those officials saw two things: the economic possibility that these services provide, and that clearly this is a needed mobility solution. And briefly, is there a danger that Uber will become too Uber? In other words, all-encompassing, crowding out the competition, that you would prevent companies like your own one was, 5 years ago from actually entering the market? No, I mean, we've got strong competition everywhere. And obviously, we're not the biggest service in China. We've got a strong competitor in India. We've got, Grab Taxi, Get Taxi in parts of the world that are very strong. We've got Lyft in the United States. So, no, listen, I think for any of us, there's probably hundreds of people right now today thinking how to do it better than us to disrupt us. That's just the nature of this. So we have to continue to innovate. One of the challenges for us is we are global. A lot of our competitors are regional or local. And so we learn a lot from being global, but they're focused just on that market. So the standard for us is, because people don't think about Uber as a San Francisco technology company. They think about Uber as their local drivers, their local community. And so we have to make sure we're providing a better service in Cairo, in Dubai, in Sydney, than the local competitors. But no, I think there's going to be a lot more people entering this space, which is great. The more choices people have, to your point, let people decide how they're going to move around their city. And now they have more choices than they've ever had before. By the end of the decade, they'll have a lot more than that. And the more choices you have, the more the regulator will come into it probably at some stage as well. Anyway, maybe not. Question from the audience. Yes, gentleman over there. Can we share the mic? Has to go all the way back to the 6th row, please. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a question for BlaBla, Zip, and Uber. What do you want from the public transport industry, the classic public transport industry, in how they operate, how they regard you guys? and how going forward in this new transformational world, they could actually work with you and support you.
Do you want to take this one, Frederick?
Yeah, I can begin with one point. One of the questions we often get is, why are you not in the US? And there are two reasons for this. One is on the economic side, because actually with $2 a gallon, there's not much to share. So the drivers are not really incentivized to share their costs. And the other one is about the infrastructure and the way the country is structured compared to other places like Europe and other countries where we've been developing. And the thing is, we have with ride sharing an issue with first and last mile, which means the drivers will say, okay, let's meet. For example, if you're in Paris, you'll say, let's meet Porte Maillot. And then all the passengers will be able to come to that meeting point with the public transport. And it is super important because the driver then gets 2 or 3 passengers at the same point, and then they go to the next city, and then he can drop them off at another place in the city, and then they'll get to their place, to their final destination, thanks to the public transit. In the US, it's much harder because the cities are more spread out. The public transit is not as efficient as what we have in other more concentrated cities where we can operate. And so we actually, as a ride-sharing platform, allowing city-to-city transport, we need a super efficient public transit in cities. So we need a very powerful network for this. And then we also need some areas where it's easy for people to park and get the people in the car and possibly wait 5-10 minutes. And so all this has to be structured in order for ride-sharing to really get developed. And so we need to cooperate with public transit because we are really complementary to this solution. We're providing city to city from all the points in the city where you can go with the public transit.
So, go on, Robin. Yeah.
Challenged me in every single company I've started is insurance. And David wasn't there, but Uber's first years doing UberX were abysmally insured. And in fact, I wouldn't participate in it. In the US, there's get around and relay rides, and they started with really poor insurance. And the reason I started BlaBlaCar in France was because I could get the right insurance. So insurance, and for Zipcar, it was a drama. When I did a company like Fred's in the US that failed, it was a drama. It's very hard. The insurance industry is risk averse, and they won't insure things they don't understand. And so you need to have like 3 years of actuarial records before they're ready to insure. So I see this as a prime place for government to step in, to say, we will insure for these first 3 years while you build a record. And as a company, I was happy to pay for insurance. I just could not buy it. No one would sell it to me because they didn't understand it. So I think insurance is a key piece. The other is, as I was explaining in my talk, that regulation and zoning is in the 19th century, where we separate out personal from commercial use and personal items from, business items, and that needs to change. So even for Zipcar, were we supposed to get commercial plates or residential plates? There wasn't something. We had to fudge that, because we were clearly a commercial service, but did that mean our users were allowed to park in loading zones? So there's this. We have to look at these regulations and recognize that there's now a new gray in all of our lives, where we work and what we own, what we do, where we work, that's completely all mixed up together now. So there's a lot of regulations that have made these clean cuts that are not clean.
Just 1 second, David. Just very quickly as a follow-up. I mean, maybe to you, Giuseppe. The point is that you need a degree of regulation in all this. This is what the insurers want. This is perhaps what the consumers want as well. As Robin said, the regulators are slow to catch up. A lot of regulation is stuck in the past. How often do the two sides actually meet with each other and have this discussion so that everyone is on the same page? Briefly.
At the RU, it's a constant dialogue with governments and trying to change regulation. We agree with what you said, over-regulation. We want more flexibility. We want more liberty. We want to work towards that. If we look just within the EU, the over-regulation in the EU is abysmal. and we have to work with governments. But it's a constant dialogue. And
what about working with people like Robin as well? I mean,
yes,
get everyone involved. Yeah.
All the industry needs to. I think the conclusion of what we're hearing here is we all need to get together, sit down and say, how do we speak to governments to make sure we have better rules that meet today's realities? That's what we need. But at the end of the day, the rules that exist must be respected. And that's my final point, is that unless we respect the rules that are in place today, it's illegal.
But if the rules that exist were drawn up in the wrong era, you know, in the era of the horse and cart, then why should they not be changed immediately?
So I just want to be a little responsive to that. For me, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've definitely been very disruptive. For me personally, there were rules that I would not cross that were around safety and around protection of individuals. Those were rules that I would not cross. But there are rules that as an entrepreneur, and here's to Uber's benefit, if I had to wait 7 years for the regulation to be changed, I could not do I'll go to Zipcar. Lots of rules, lots of taxes were put in place to tax car rental because car rental was outsiders. So in Boston, where I launched, they had a $10 convention fee per transaction. You clearly cannot rent a car by the hour with a $10 transaction fee. I consulted lawyers with my brand new little startup, no money self, and we decided we're going to go for it. And after 4 years, we're going to go for it. And what is a transaction? We are not car rental, and what is a transaction? And after 4 years, Avis and Hertz and Enterprise went to the state of Massachusetts and said, Zipcar, because now we were powerful and had a lot, they said, Zipcar has been ignoring this regulation. And it was determined that a transaction was when you became a member. So once a year, people in Boston pay $10. But we could not have done that service had I had to wait 4 years for the regulators to get to it. Startups do not have, Uber's no longer a startup, they have billions of dollars. Startups have no money, they cannot wait around for that. So for me, and I feel very anxious about it, competitors in the US started doing things that I thought, those are risks I wouldn't take because that's insurance and people with cars do die. That absolutely positively happens. So that's why I say I feel gray about it.
Okay.
I think, I mean, that's a great example, Robin. I think it's interesting on, first insurance and on public transportation. You know, it's interesting in the United States, and you know, listen, every ride all over the world is guaranteed with coverage, but what's interesting in the United States, that our relationship with the insurance industry has completely changed. We are now in partnership with the entire insurance industry in the United States, working together on changing regulations. And so it's terrific because when you have Uber in the insurance industry going in to talk to people and saying this is the way forward, because they also see the benefit to them, that this is a growing sector. I think on public transportation is one of the things we're most excited about. The maps that were circling while I was talking were examples in cities around the world where we are providing transportation around last subway or bus stops. So we're very powerful last mile effect. And we are actually now in partnership in Atlanta, Georgia, in Dallas, Texas, and Denver, Colorado, just as 3 examples in the US, and we'll take this globally soon, where we are partnering formally with the public transportation service, where, you know, Uber's in their app, so that people know if they get on a subway, they can order a car before, you know, as they get to the next stop, and it will be there. Because cities are very interested in solving this last mile challenge, which is there's sometimes a disincentive, which is if it's going to be late at night, will I be able to get home? How expensive is parking? And so this is one where we see us as a great complement and actually a solution to getting more people onto public transportation.
Okay, Mika, final word, because we're running out of time.
Fast comment, so about this insurance thing, and the point is that how industry can help insurance companies to understand the risks, because at the end of the game, that is the name of the game. So, for example, we have created the technologies based on the data what we are collecting, based on this data economy. We have received quite a lot of data, and we are able to create so-called driving patterns, i.e., providing the data that how people are driving on roads, how they are. How much they are speeding, how much they are braking on the streets, and of course today it is enormous data. So you cannot identify who has been the driver. But such kind of information can be provided for the regulators and insurance companies in order to provide facts. Sometimes I have a feeling that when we are in a time of disruptions, because we don't know. We tend to over-regulate things just to be sure.
Okay, we've really run out of time, so one final question from the gentleman here. Yeah.
It's not a question, it's a statement.
It's a statement, I'm sorry, yes.
Abusing from the privilege of being the Secretary General of the
All right,
International Transport Forum.
Even better, yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Thank you. It also answering to your question, why don't you guys meet? Mm-hmm. That's what the ITF is about, providing the platform for different stakeholders to meet and to discuss, and this has been a session of great value. And in our role, the other role we have, which is providing policy advice to governments, be sure that much of what I've learned here today will be transmitted. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. I have to say it was absolutely fascinating. I wish we had more time, and the audience has been great, and I can only pay you the highest compliment. You've been blah, blah. Thank you. That was great. Thank you.